Or there's also this that blah, 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 blah. Are you a pressed powder or loose powder? Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Jody, and I'm really glad that you're here today. So we're gonna talk about, well, first let me say, if you are not a subscriber, I hope you consider subscribing to this channel so that you can be notified of a new video that's posted, and I do one every single week. And I also hope that you'll give me some comments just so that I know if this is the type of content that you're interested in, or if there's something specific that you'd like me to cover that perhaps I haven't. So I really am trying to build a community where we exchange ideas and share ideas. So I would love to hear from you guys. So you can leave a comment in the section right below. There's also the subscribe button right there in the red box that says subscribe. If you just click that, you'll be notified of new videos that come out every week. I think I already said that, but let's not digress. Let's get started. In this video, I wanted to cover the differences between loose powder and pressed powder for the face, and when is it appropriate, or when should you use one versus the other. And you'll definitely want to stay to the end of this video because I'm going to share with you which one I prefer to use, but most specifically which product of the two, loose or pressed powder, that I use. So there's a lot of different schools of thought on the types of powder that you should use to really set your foundation. Now, it really does depend less on the type of the powder that you want to use, and the first thing that you have to determine is what type of skin do you have. So for example, I have pretty combination skin. So once you determine if you have dry skin, combination skin, or oily skin, then you'll know which powder to apply. So let's cover some pros and cons of the two. Loose powder it's very finely milled, which means it has a little bit less oil in it. So it's really good for oily skin because you're not adding that extra oil to your oily skin, which also means that pressed powder is bigger molecules, so it does have more oil in it, which means it's typically better for dry skin. So there's your first point of difference. If you have oily skin, think about loose powder first. If you have dry skin, then pressed powder. Now that's sort of step one. There's still some other things to think about before you determine really which powder is best for you. The second thing to think about is loose powder can settle into fine lines and pores, where pressed powder is again a little bit thicker. Loose powder was never really designed to be a stand on its own. It was really meant to either bake with or to layer over your foundation to set your makeup. Pressed powder, on the other hand, can absolutely be used on top of foundation, but it can also be used as a standalone because of its thicker consistency that it has. Now, that's what makes pressed powder a little dangerous, is the thickness of it, and how you apply it then takes us to sort of thought number 3 that we need to be thinking about. If you are applying a loose powder, some people really are big believers in baking, and what baking is when you set that loose powder underneath the eye typically and let it set there for 5 minutes or so, and then just lightly, brush it off. I am not a fan of that. I don't see where that works on more mature skin. When I first saw it on YouTube and on different blogs, I thought, oh, sign me up if I can have something that makes my wrinkles go away. But to me, baking on my mature eyes with the wrinkles that I have was just disastrous. So I'm not a fan of baking. However, if you are a fan, loose powder is for sure your choice. The other way to use loose powder is just to sort of, again, set your makeup. So talking about the application of loose powder, one of the ones that I use is RCMA. Now, RCMA is, it's been around for a very long time. You can see it's very finely milled. So it does tend to settle into lines and wrinkles if you don't apply it correctly. For under the eyes, a loose powder, what I do is make a big mess. That's what I do. The application is critically important for loose powder as well as pressed powder. So let's talk about the application process. As I get powder all over my camera. Probably looks, I feel like I'm in a snow globe. So in terms of loose powder, I use a really dense little brush, and this is a Kevin Aquan brush, but any densely short bristled, heavily packed brush will work. And what I do is after I put my concealer on under my eye, I'll take the loose powder and just push it in to that concealer And that really does give me a nice all-day wear with my concealer without that crepey, crepey, cakey look that makes you look about 10 years older. And I have done that, trust me. So this has worked really well for me, is just dabbing it in with that it's the brush that makes all the difference. Not this specific brush, but again, that densely packed short brush. And then I'll just take a loose powder, that same one, and I get it really lightly coated on a tapered brush, also pretty thick. And I just lightly cover the areas that I typically will get shiny throughout the day. And on me, that's definitely my forehead, T-zone, and my nose. I don't know if you guys have this, but my nose always tends to turn red. And I don't know why that is throughout the day. Like the makeup sort of comes off unless I do this. So I really try to just real light cover, and that sets my foundation for the whole day. So I'm a loose powder person. If you're a pressed powder person, based on our sort of decision tree that we've just gone through, and I would highly recommend that you buy one of each and decide which one works best for you. Because if you like loose powder, typically they don't come in small, compact. I think some of the smaller ones are, like for example, this Laura Mercier, which is again a nice loose powder. But for the most part, loose powders don't come in compact. So a good thing to use is, if you did buy both, is to use your loose powder if that's the one that you like, if you have combination or oily skin. If you did purchase both, obviously buy a small one of both of them, but loose powder is a little bit harder to just throw in your purse and go. So you may end up liking both of them, maybe an application in the day with your loose powder to set everything. Unless you have dry skin, that may not be your best choice. But then in the evening or just throughout the day, you can throw a pressed powder compact in your handbag or your purse and just touch up throughout the day. So that might be an option if you buy both. I recommend purchasing a loose powder and a pressed powder just to try them out. But again, be thinking about the type of skin that you have and what you're trying to overcome throughout the day. The best way to apply pressed powder, and this is a scary one because this can go wrong really quickly. Pressed powder, because of its thickness, I like to apply it with a damp beauty sponge. And here I'll just try the YSL pressed powder. Now again, pressed powder is really nice as it's by itself. You can, however, put it over foundation as a setting powder. So the key with pressed powder is the application, because once you get it on that damp beauty sponge, it's critically important that you push in and kind of roll it where you want it to go, because you've just put foundation on. And so think of sort of like wet paint where it just isn't quite dry. If you just go in and start rubbing everywhere, you're moving the foundation, and then you're going to have really uneven application of the foundation that you've just put on. So I just put a wet beauty sponge, and you can see it's there. And pay special attention to your forehead, your chin typically, and then your cheeks, and just press it and roll it. And that really does make a huge difference on the appearance of that cakiness that none of us want. Especially at this stage of life. Cakey makeup is a no-go. So that is how I would wear it if I were to have dry skin and want pressed powder, or if I wanted a really full coverage for like a glam night or something. Then I would, even me with oily skin, I would put on my foundation and put on a pressed powder if I really wanted a kind of a double layer of coverage and a very glam look foundation. Then I would definitely do the pressed powder. But normal day-to-day, I would go with a loose powder, again, for my skin. The other thing is to find a loose powder that does not have flashback. We've all seen those pictures from the red carpet or wherever, where they've got that flashback of that white underneath their eyes typically. RCMA does not have flashback. Laura Mercier also does not have flashback. And this one you can pick this one up at so many places, because it wins a lot of allure. My camera's gonna get all dirty. It does win a lot of allure awards, and rightfully so. It's a very good one. Another one, those are two really good loose powders if you want to try one. And this RCMA you can get on Amazon for, gosh, and they're both translucent, so they're clear. And this one, this RCMA, you can get on Amazon, and I'll link all these products down below in the description box if you're interested in purchasing any of them. But you can get this on Amazon, I think, but I'll link it below for you. And then the pressed powder, you know, I've tried Chanel, beautiful color. I've tried YSL, beautiful. I am just not a fan of pressed powder, quite frankly, because I think it tends to make me look cakey unless I'm really careful with how I apply it, and I don't take that much time in the morning to be that careful to not get the sponge too damp, to not move it in the wrong direction. There's just a few more rules that you have to follow, I guess, with pressed powder. But again, if it's a night out or a glam situation, then I will use foundation, whether it's full coverage or medium coverage, and that pressed powder, because that does give it that extra layer of coverage. So I hope that gives you some clarity on if you're a loose powder person, or if maybe you should try pressed powder, because it can be a little confusing, I found. So I've just done a ton of research and a lot of trial and error on my own, and read a lot of different vlogs and makeup artists' suggestions. And I've tried the 2 different ways, and what I've shared with you has been really helpful to me. So I hope it's helpful to you as well. Let me know if this is if you are interested in this type of content. And I'm also curious if you have a good pressed powder that you have enjoyed using, because I have not found one that I'm really feel good enough that I could recommend to everyone that I've tried, because I don't use it that often. But I'd love to hear what you guys think about a good pressed powder. So if you want to leave that in the comments below. And then, as promised, I told you the splurge that I have found in the last, gosh, I think I bought this in June. So it's been almost 2.5 months, 2 months, is the Shiseido Future Solution LX powder. It's a loose powder. It has a bit of a color to it on the sponge, you can see, but I don't find that it gives me much color on my face at all. I actually don't think it shows that much at all. The reason I like it over maybe the Laura Mercier one is because I think it has a little bit of a sheen maybe to it, and it just sort of gives it, for me, it just gives a different, I don't know, maybe a little bit of a glow. Maybe if I was to stretch for something, yeah, maybe that's why I like it. I guess maybe it just feels like it finishes my look and pulls it all together. So this is $67. It is 0.35 ounces. I picked it up at Nordstrom. Shiseido is such a good brand because they have a lot of skincare products in their products, which is another reason that I have used their CC cream as well as now their loose powder. So I'm becoming a fan slowly. So I hope that's helpful, guys. Let me know what you think. Are you a pressed powder or loose powder? There's no right or wrong, you know, in makeup. It's all about what works best for you and trial and error. But as I am more maturing with my skin, loose powder loosely. There we go. That's an easy way to remember it. Loose powder loosely. That is the best recipe for me, and maybe it'll work for you too. I hope you enjoyed the video, you guys. Have a good rest of your day. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.